Hello.
Yes.
So I'm a 20-year-old, and I'm just wondering, what would you? Oh, sorry. What would you tell your 20-year-old self? Like what you've learned so far. Like what would you do differently? Any advice you would give me, like what to avoid, what to do, or anything that you would redo, or any advice?
Well, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, you'd redo all of it, right? Um, but most of it is not, it is not marketing. I mean, it, um, um, knowing what I know now, which is always, the problem with time travel in science fiction is if you change one thing, you screw up everything, right? So um, that's the caveat is for even for everything that on its surface, putting it in its own isolated box, it would have been a lot smarter not to have been doing it. If you take the box away from it and feed it into the context of everything, it also caused certain things to happen that I wouldn't want to sacrifice. Having said that, I probably would have quit drinking a lot sooner than I did. That would have been a useful thing. Um, um, I want a full decade of what the financial guys call high income underinvested. It would have been useful not to have done that. Um, and with that said, so the one real business thing, I guess, is, but it links to that, is knowing what I know now, I would have paid a higher unit amount than I was willing to at various points in time to buy more customers. So that that would be the business thing. And I harangue clients about it all the time, right? Is do you really need that third house, or would it be better to take the million and buy some more customers, even at a higher price than your current maximum allowable is? Because it is hard, even in most normal businesses, unless you're running like a Dairy Queen or something. But I mean, in most normal businesses, it's hard to beat the lifetime ROI on a customer. And in our kinds of businesses, it's almost impossible to beat it. You know, I mean, I didn't do it this morning, but I won't make you stand up, but just for his benefit, everybody raise their hand who spent more than 100 grand total with me or GKIC. Everybody that's in the $100,000 club. Keep them up for a second. You learn more by looking around at them than you do by looking at me. All right? Well, so what they represent, slightly higher percentage of this room because of the nature of this room, but in the total GKIC universe, they represent about 5% of the membership is at $100,000 of spend or above. So you can spend a shitload of money to get customers when 5% of them are going to be worth 100 grand, right? And there's another whole batch. If you didn't raise your hands for that, raise it if you think you're at least above 50 grand. See, now we're past half this room between the two. So there are definitely times early enough in life that I didn't need to spend it on me, that I could have been more liberal about my willingness to buy a customer, where I would not use a media because it costs too much to get a customer from that media. A minor thing, which I've talked about before, it's a wealth thing. I would have, knowing what I know now, the minute I moved out of house into an office, I would have bought a building to put it in. Because if you total up the rent that's been paid, even though I'm ridiculously cheap about it, We finally moved the Phoenix office a few years ago out to Scottsdale after the second time Vicki came in and there was a dead body in the stairwell at the front of the building. Broke my heart though, because we were only paying $200 a month in rent. But you know, you got to weigh pros and cons. You know, she's a trooper. She didn't want to move, but I said, yeah, look, you know, eventually there's going to be one in front of the door. They're going to be too fat for you to drag out of the way. You're going to be late. You know, we got to go, right? So like my friend Summers White. So when Summers moved his office out of his house, he went to the outskirts of Scottsdale. So all towns grow, right? So he went to the outskirts of Scottsdale, Arizona, and he bought kind of a crapola house because he only has a couple employees. So them coming and going in a residential is no big deal. He bought a crapola house, and that's where he put his office, right? And about 10 years ago now, I guess, that outskirts of Scottsdale is now all $1 million houses. And he sold his crapola house. He ultimately wound up buying the one next to it, too. So he sold his 2 crapola houses for like $3.6 million. Of course, plus he didn't pay any rent all these years. So it's probably, if you look at him to me, it's probably a $6 million swing by him making one decision and me making, you know, another. But the big thing is the purchase of customers. Because if your business is the right kind of business and the business is set up well, you are not going to be, no matter what else you do with the money. Obviously, if you blow it, you're not. So if you're buying Lamborghinis and girlfriends and stuff, that's all, you know, depreciating assets. That's, you know, well, it is. That's why guys like Mike Tyson wind up, you know, broke, right? So that's all depreciating assets. And but even if you do other stuff, you know, I mean, the market is not going to outperform the ROI you're going to get in a customer under the best of circumstances. Real estate is not going to outperform the ROI you're going to get in your own customer under the best of circumstances. Gold is not going to, you can go down the list, right? So you don't want to be high income underinvested, but at least 50% of your investment ought to be into buying customers for your own business. And I don't know, I was a decade late coming to these realizations. Not that anybody needs to feel sympathetic. I mean, I've done fine, but I could have done finer.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Dan, referring back to the movie that you had us watch, the question that I've got is, how do you take some of the concepts, the very illegal concepts that they were doing, and apply them? How do you apply some of those tricks in your copywriting?
So first of all, if you had a transcript and you analyzed it against the list, you would find umpteen number of hijacks in play. And as I said, the main gig in that movie is lifted from and again, I forget his name, from the UK. Thank you, Darren Brown. So if you want to Google somebody, Google Darren Brown. Is lifted right out of magic mentalism demos. And the main principle is the main principle of all this is short-circuiting by whatever means someone's critical thinking and their normal modus operandi for doing a certain thing. In your world, mostly that would be making a purchase, right? So somebody said it yesterday, it's old sales language, is, I think Sandler maybe, is, you know, if you're not using your system for selling effectively, they're using their system for buying, and it generally, mostly is not to buy, or to buy by price, or to buy, you know, their systems are all not what we want to rely on. So it is all about how can you switch that off and switch on a different way that people react, right? So, like from memory, suckering the guy into betting more and more and more, right? That's an ego hook. That's just a pure ego hook. And the speed at which things happen allows for distraction. And so if you watch, like there's a Penn and Teller has a show on called Fool Me. And it's on the CW. It's in reruns right now. So it's on like twice a week. And magicians come on and do their thing. And if they fool Penn and Teller, if they don't know how the trick was done, then they get to be an opening act one night at Penn and Teller's show. And so so it's like American Idol for magicians, right? And there's everything there from pros to the guy's a short order cook and he does this on the side. And every once in a while, by the way, somebody does fool Penn and Teller. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but some of them are so bad. I mean, I watched 15 minutes of it last night, and I mean, I saw the guy move the card, you know. But then I'm looking, right? And they're looking. And we both know what to look for. The audience thought the guy was the best one of the four that night. They're like having an orgasm over what he just did and a standing ovation. And I mean, I saw him move the card, right? But I was looking. And so it's all about how to change the dynamic of this person's approach to making their decision about you or your proposition, right? And so what most sales training is about, and what most copywriting training is about, is how to improve on and facilitate the same way they make a decision already. And that's its flaw, if you will. So like most sales training. So look, sales training 101 is the Ben Franklin, draw the line, close, right? Draw the line down the middle of the page, and we list all the reasons to do it on one side, and we list all the reasons not to do it on the other side. And the salesman's game is to have more reasons to than reasons against, and you total up the two sides, and oh, look, your score is 101 for and 68 against, and that theoretically now facilitates the close. Right? Well, it's better than no closing technique at all, right? But it is still in the same frame that the guy tries to make a decision anyway. All you're trying to do is sort of an incremental manipulation of the numbers. But a critical analytical thinker making a logical decision about whether to buy something or not buy it, he's doing the Ben Franklin thing in his head already, right? This is about throwing that out the window and having him never do let's see, reasons for, reasons against. There are no reasons against. Okay? We just erased them and that process and put him in an entirely different mode of getting to a decision. And you're up to, what'd you tell me you're up to?
27% conversion increase.
Improvement.
Yes. It's pretty mind-blowing. Anyway.
So I told him, the holy grail of direct marketing, and not enough people try and get to it, and he's got it. So he's been able to go a 15% improvement one night, and now by today a 27% improvement. The holy grail of direct marketing is a control, is a thing that lasts, that you can use on an ongoing basis, not for 3 days and then you have to change everything. A control that works well enough that you are making happy money with it. Because now you're in a position to keep tweaking. And, well, what happens if we change 2 words? What happens if we put a 7 instead of a 9? What happens if and when you have an online control, that's like the double holy grail. Because as you all know, you can split and redirect the traffic to 4 different variables, as it comes in live time and knows something day to day. If we do that with direct mail, you know, it's, and when you have to do it with like a TV infomercial, it's like blow your brains out territory because it takes a month and everybody's got to sit in the edit bay and eat cold pizza and it's expensive, and it's, you know, but it's still worth doing. Everybody still loves it. I mean, 2 years ago in the inbound call script for Proactive, I changed 4 words in 1 sentence, and we got a 15% bump in conversions. Now, to be fair, so I always tell the story that way. Okay? I did 9 different things that we tested, and 8 of them either had no impact at all, or they actually made things worse. Okay? But 1 out of 9, when you're doing 1 million phone calls a month, everybody's happy. Now, if you're only doing 10, you know, it's statistically insignificant and it doesn't matter, and you have to fool with things that will be significant to you. In small, but we're dealing with a $40 transaction. If you're dealing with a, what's a case? If you're dealing with a $6,000 transaction, I don't need as many units for my little tweak against the control to still make money, right? So not enough people try and get to controls, things that they get to use. So like I'm going to show you today, this stuff I use with Kimball and Get Rich in Real Estate. I mean, we got pieces that now are going on their 9th year. And other than this kind of testing, there's been no need to fool with them. They're consistently productive. But it gives you the opportunity to, okay, let's try a different headline. Let's try a different price point. It's offline to online, so let's not fool with the offline piece, but let's fool around a lot with the online because it's kind of painless, right? And we've actually increased the ROI year to year, every year of those 9 years by being able to fool with little things against the big thing that's locked in place. And not enough businesses they don't even try to get to this. You know, they do a Father's Day promotion and that's it. And if they remember, maybe they use it again next year. But for the most part, they forget it and they create a whole new Father's Day promotion when that rolls around next year. But they're not trying to work on a promotion they can lock in place for 10 years. So anyway,
No, it's okay. My question was, so how do you, when you write copyright, I'm just curious about your habit. Like, what are your 5 steps that you do before you even sit down to create a marketing campaign or to write copyright? You know, because I have my own little.
How do you know there's 5?
Or 6
Oh,
or
okay.
10
I
or
thought you
15
were.
or 100.
I
I'm
thought
just
you
curious
were.
because, you know, we all
I
creatures
thought
of
you
habit.
were doing mental telepathy or
No,
something.
No, you know, I'm a creature of habit, so I have my, you know, my steps, and I'm just curious
yeah,
about
yeah.
your thought process. Like,
Yeah.
how do you go through?
Okay, so it varies a little based on learning curve or zero learning. In other words, if I'm doing deja vu or not. That's a variable. The capability of the client is a variable because the amount of research stuff needed varies based on what they can provide, right? So if they're like either completely fouled up or they're starting from zero or, you know, they're not very bright, then like the transcript of their sales presentation doesn't help much. If they're pretty good, the transcript of their sales presentation helps a lot, right? So that's the second variable, right? The third variable is a pragmatic one. And I try not to underprice, but the amount of money I'm being paid dictates how much time this entire thing can get. So I pretty much know how long it's going to take to write it. So that has to be subtracted from the total number of hours that can be allocated, and that's all the prep this can get, right? So like when Miracle Air was $2 million, right? I can spend days getting on the phone, interviewing 15 franchise owners, different ones in different parts of the country. I can get a little old lady and be her pretend son, and we can go to a couple Miracle Air places, and I can personally mystery shop them. I mean, I can go dig around with a big shovel, right? If this is 150 grand and that's all the client, I can't do that. So I got to get what I can get from them, and I got to move on. So I try not to put myself in a position where I'm so time handicapped, I'm really not doing what I should do. But there is that practical issue, you know. It's like, and of course that's my financial approach to everything, right? So what I do to prepare for this seminar and for frills and for anything else starts with the total amount of revenue that's going to come from the seminar divided by a minimum of $19,000 a day. Okay? And now there's 3 days of seminar, deduct those, and here's what's left to allocate to prep. Now you can make the argument there's been 40 years of prep, you know, but I mean prep. And whether or not we have mind readers and all of that is monetary, right? So those are the three variables. Generally speaking, my process to sort of better answer your question. So there's one big accumulation phase, right? And I want everything I can get from the client. I want the media of their market, whether they now use it or not. Okay, so I want, what does the target read? Where does the target go? What is the target watch? I want to know that, okay? So like the last time I rewrote a ton of stuff for Proactive, okay? I read about 20 of teen lit novels. So the vampire series, because that's what the teen girls are, right? So I'm at Barnes & Noble buying teen magazines and teen vampire novels and shit, you know. And I'm going through it, you know, okay, here's a consistent thing that appeals to them, right? How are we going to use that? So, and I'm accumulating competitive intelligence. So if I have my druthers, if we're going to do mail, I may be from archives getting some control packages being used on the lists that we are probably going to mail. So there's this piling up of stuff stage, right? And then working backwards, there's the stuff that I piled up that now is of no use to me, or I tore 6 pages. So now there's the throw out all the stuff from the pile so you have a workable pile, right? Phase one. Phase two, most of the time, I load copy at random. I just get it into the computer. I do the same thing with seminar, by the way. So nothing's in order in the computer file. It's a god-awful mess. So like when GKIC gets this, if they didn't have video or paper slides, they'd never recreate the manual because it's not in any order in the computer file. I just loaded and loaded and loaded, and then I printed it all out. So I load just a paragraph about this, a paragraph about that, 8 pages about this, etc. Then I print it all out, and then one item to a page, and I shuffle it like 3 or 5 cards. And we're going to talk about that today. And I just keep putting it in order and putting it in order and putting it in order until I kind of got it in the order I wanted. And now I'm actually going to sit down now and write copy. So that's like my 3 phases. There's a fourth in an area that so again, I'll use Proactive. So it's been a long time since I've had a teenager in the house, and an even longer time since I have been one. And it's been a long time since I've had a teenager's mom in the house. So I'm pretty distanced from that market. And if I don't get anything else wrong, I'm going to get tonality wrong. So in those circumstances, I will hire readers. So I never use cub writers. Some guys do. But I will hire readers. So I will go to AWAI, American Writers and Artists. I'll post on the jobs board, or I kind of have an inside track, so I'll ask Katie, find me 5. So like for proactive, I want aspiring or actual, but they can be D-level, direct response copywriters. They can have day jobs. I don't care. It's actually okay by me if they do. But I want an AWAI freelancer who is a mom or a dad of a teenage daughter or a teenage son, preferably one with acne. And I'll get, like the last time I paid 5 of them. And I'm doing the same thing now with the orthodontic stuff. I did exactly the same stuff. So all my rough drafts went to the same kind of reader. And the video rough will go to the same people. And all I want from them is notes. I don't want them to write a word of copy. Please don't. Just tell me where you think I didn't ring the bell. And about half of it is worthless because they are still trying to write copy. But it's a worthwhile exercise. Now, I try and not have to do that. First of all, it's money out of my pocket I didn't get to keep. It's not much, but secondly, it slows the process. And third, I'm old. I don't want a learning curve. So, if I can twice a year write Get Rich in Real Estate for somebody new, I'm a happier, like hawking stuff to the chiro and the doctor and the pharmacy owner. I've already done that 50 times, right? Now to the patient, harder work, right? And so I will, for him, I'm using a few readers for the consumer stuff. So now I want a 60-year-old plus with bad diabetes who's a freelance, aspiring copywriter to read the stuff. That's what I want. So that'll be a 4th step that I will use that I generally don't publicize. But I only use it when I feel I must. Okay? All right.